The rain came down in thick sheets, soaking the rusted rooftops and turning the red dirt roads of Agege into sludgy streams. The street was already alive with vendors shouting over the roar of passing danfos, engines sputtering through puddles, and gospel music bleeding from crackling radios. Amid the chaos, Amira Johnson stood behind a roadside food stall, sleeves rolled to her elbows, smoke curling around her as she flipped puff-puffs in bubbling oil. Her stepmother Carla stood nearby, arms folded, eyes sharp as cut glass. "You call this on time?" she snapped. "Lazy girl, can't even be trusted to show up properly." Amira didn't answer. Her hair was still damp from the walkover, and her eyes were heavy from another sleepless night spent studying borrowed textbooks by candlelight. She murmured a quiet apology, knowing it wouldn't matter. Carla clicked her tongue. "Useless. All those books won't feed you. This is the real world." Amira swallowed her pride and focused on the food. It had been this way since her mother died, and Carla, married to her late uncle, begrudgingly took her in. There was no love in that home-only obligation, cold meals, and constant reminders that she was a burden. When the stall closed in the late afternoon, Amira wrapped her school shoes in a plastic bag and began the long walk home barefoot. The ground slick beneath her soles. She kept her head down, arms hugging her worn school bag. As she passed a quiet corner lined with hedges and shiny sedans, something caught her RJ leather wallet lying in the mud, right next to a black SUV. The car looked empty, the area deserted. She hesitated, heart pounding. Slowly, she bent and picked it up. It was heavy. She opened it. Her breath caught. Neatly folded cash, more than she'd ever seen in her life stacked. Beside crisp business cards and an ID, David Taylor. She looked around again, waiting for someone to shout, to claim it. Nothing. Only the hiss of rain and the whine of a nearby generator. Her stomach clenched. That money could feed her for months. It could pay her school fees, maybe even buy freedom. She clutched the wallet to her chest, torn between need and conscience. That night, she sat on the edge of her thin mattress, the wallet beside her like a burning secret. Carla snored behind the curtain. The rain drummed steadily above. Amira stared at the ceiling, whispering silent questions into the dark. In the morning, she rose with tired eyes, put on her cleanest clothes, and tied her school shoes carefully. Then she slipped the wallet into her bag, not to keep it, but to give it back. Amira Johnson's world is small, worn, and fraying at the edges. She wakes before dawn each day in a cramped one-room apartment she shares with her stepmother, Carla, whose bitterness has seeped into every corner of their home like mold. Carla married Amira's uncle after her mother passed from a long, untreated illness, and took Amira in not out of love, but obligation. From the start, Carla made sure Amira knew she was unwanted, scolding her over missed chores, mocking her dreams, and calling her useless like it was her name. Still, Amira carries herself with quiet resolve. She attends night classes at a community center 3 evenings a week, studying to become a social worker, a dream rooted in the pain she's witnessed and endured. She works at Carla's roadside food stall during the day, studies by candlelight at night, and walks everywhere to save money, her school shoes wrapped in plastic to preserve them. Her only emotional anchor is her best friend, Lana, a bold and spirited hairstylist who rents a tiny chair at a local salon. Lana often reminds Amira of who she is: bright, capable, worthy when the world insists otherwise. One afternoon, to sit together in the back of the salon, braiding hair and sharing suya. When Amira reveals the story her family has always told her, her father abandoned her mother when she was 4. He left and never looked back, Carla had said with a sneer. But Amira, even as a child, refused to believe it. Her memories are hazy, a hand lifting her to her shoulder, a man's deep laugh, but they feel real. "Maybe he died," she says softly. watching the street outside. Or maybe he just couldn't come back. Lana scoffs. Deadbeat men don't need reasons, babe. They just leave. Across the city, in a sleek, glass-walled office, David Taylor sits behind a polished mahogany desk, fingers tapping restlessly. He's built a successful private security firm from the ground up, and his name is known in corporate and political circles. But success hasn't softened him. David is a man of structure, control, and simmering restraint. Today, however, he's unraveling just slightly. He's arguing with his lawyer, again, about the private investigation he's been funding for over a decade. We've gone through every lead, the lawyer insists. There's nothing credible. The girl died in the fire. That's what the report says. But David's jaw tightens. That's what they wanted me to believe. Years ago, during a brutal custody battle, he lost all contact with his daughter after a court granted full custody to her mother's side of the family. Then came the fire. The official story claimed his daughter perished with her grandmother in a house blaze. But David never saw a body, never had closure. A part of him has always doubted. He suspects foul play, manipulation, a deliberate effort to erase him from his daughter's life. The guilt gnaws at him. He remembers her as a baby, brown curls, wide eyes, her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. Every birthday since, he's poured money into the search, hoping for a sign. His office shelves are lined with case files, photographs, documents, none of them definitive. He is haunted by what-ifs, but too emotionally guarded to admit how much it's destroyed him. He's become a man who trusts no one, not even himself. Back in Ajaj, Amira walks home from the salon, her mind heavy. She doesn't say it to Lana, but sometimes at night, she dreams of a man with her eyes. In her dreams, he's not cruel, but kind. He's always reaching for her, as if trying to find his way back. In the real world, all she has is her resolve, her faith, and the wallet she found the day before. The name on the ID still echoes in her mind, David Taylor. Something about it prickles under her skin. She doesn't know yet that the man she's about to meet isn't just the wallet's owner. He may be the answer to every question she's ever asked, and the beginning of a truth, far more complicated than she's prepared for. On a bright Monday morning, Amira stands before the towering glass facade of Taylor Security Solutions, her heart pounding against her ribs. She's wearing her best outfit, a faded blouse, carefully pressed, and a navy skirt that sways stiffly around her knees. The security guard eyes her with curiosity as she clutches the brown leather wallet, still pristine, to her chest. Inside, the name David Taylor gleams from the ID. The man whose life seems galaxies away from her muddy streets and oil-stained hands. At the front desk, a neatly dressed receptionist blinks in surprise when Amira explains why she's here. "You found Mr. Taylor's wallet, with everything in it?" she asks, voice laced with disbelief. "Yes," Amira replies quietly. "I just wanted to return it." She waits nervously, unsure if she'd be laughed at, arrested, or simply dismissed. Instead, after a few hushed calls, she's led to a sleek waiting room with leather chairs and chilled water she's too nervous to drink. When David Taylor finally enters, he's all sharp edges and pressed lines, his expression guarded. He glances at the wallet in her lap, then at her. "You're the one who returned it." Amira nods. "Yes, sir." He studies her like a riddle. "Nothing was missing." "I didn't take anything," she says. "I just thought you'd need it back." He narrows his eyes hard to believe, yet somehow he does. There's something unsettlingly familiar in her gaze, something earnest and unpolished that catches him off guard. "Why?" he asks. "Most people wouldn't bother." Amira hesitates, then shrugs. "Because it wasn't mine." He offers her a reward money, a thank you, anything she wants. But Amira shakes her head, hands folded in her lap. "I don't want anything," she says, "except maybe an opportunity." "Do you take interns?" David is caught off guard. Her voice is soft but sure. He chuckles, not unkindly. You want to work here? Yes, sir. I go to school at night. I can help in the office. I just want to learn. There's something about hurt, too poised to be naive, too genuine to be calculating. He agrees, half out of curiosity, half out of something he can't name. Within days, Amira starts a temporary admin role, filing documents, updating logs, making tea for meetings. She works with quiet focus, never late, never distracted. David watches from a distance, noticing the way she scribbles notes in tidy script, the way she folds her hands when nervous, the way she offers a smile but never asks for more. There's a strange ache in his chest when he hears her full name. Amira, his daughter, would have been around her age. He begins to dig quietly at first, pulling old files, revisiting timelines, comparing photos. His mind races with coincidences. Could it be? Is it even possible? Back in Age Edge, Carla's mood shifts when she hears Amira is working for a big man. Her eyes gleam with opportunity. So you've landed yourself a rich ogre, she smirks, arms crossed. Don't forget the roof you sleep under. At first, Amira ignores her, but soon Carla begins to twist her words, leaving guilt like breadcrumbs. It's for the house, she says, when she demands part of Amira's modest paycheck. Don't be ungrateful. Amira, desperate to keep peace, hands over what little she can spare. Carla pushes harder each week, claiming sacrifices, spinning stories about how she fed and raised her all these years. Amira begins to feel the pull of two worlds, one offering possibility, the other chaining her to the past. All the while, David watches her with growing unease, unable to shake the feeling that fate is looping back on itself. What started as a simple act of honesty is now unraveling secrets neither of them are ready for. David Taylor sat alone in his office late into the night, files scattered across his polished desk. The shadows cast by the desk lamp flickered against the aged photographs and yellowed case reports spread before him. He had requested the private investigator's archive after a week of quietly observing Amira, her mannerisms, the way she tilted her head when thinking, the shape of her eyes, her stubborn resolve. It wasn't just a coincidence anymore. The timelines aligned too well. His daughter, presumed dead after a fire, would have been 19 now. So was Amira, the town she grew up in, the same area his investigators once circled but never pursued. A photo he found from years ago, him holding a toddler at a beach, burned into his memory. Her curly hair, her dimples, her eyes, Amira's eyes. The resemblance was no longer deniable. A DNA sample collected discreetly from a coffee cup was sent off. The waiting nearly undid him. He became distant at the office, quieter around her. He watched her too closely, his thoughts a storm. Should he tell her? Would she believe him? Had she suffered because of his silence? In his mind, guilt gnawed through every theory. Meanwhile, Amira felt the shift. David's warmth had dulled. He was polite but distracted, often staring at her, like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. One afternoon, as she walked past his office, she heard raised voices, David and his lawyer arguing again. She paused at the slightly open door. She might still be alive, David said, voice strained. There's too much lining up. I can feel it. The lawyer's voice was harsher. And if you're wrong, you'll destroy this girl's life. Again, Amira backed away quietly, pulse racing. Asterisk, was he talking about her? Confused and anxious, she buried herself in work, the questions mounting inside her like bricks. Carla, always alert to opportunity, had begun her own snooping. Rumors reached her. David Taylor asking questions, digging into Amira's background. One evening, when Amira returned home with groceries, Carla was waiting. You think I don't know what's going on? She hissed, arms crossed, lips curled. You think I'm stupid? Amira stared at her, confused. What are you talking about? Carla stepped closer, eyes gleaming with fury and fear. That man is looking at you like your blood. If you come into money, you better not forget who raised you. If you try to shut me out, I'll tell everyone you're a fraud. You owe me. Don't play smart, girl." Amira stood frozen. The words pierced something inside. Her dread and anger twined together. That night, she barely slept. Every conversation, every stolen glance, every lie Carla had ever told seemed to rearrange themselves into a new, terrifying picture. 2 days later, David called her into his office. This time, his demeanor had changed, softer, almost broken. "Amira," he began, voice unsteady, "can I ask you something personal?" She nodded cautiously. "What do you know about your mother?" Amira swallowed. "Not much. She died when I was 6. Her name was Egypt. She used to sing when she cleaned. She used to say I was the only good thing she ever did." David blinked quickly, his jaw trembling. Slowly, he opened a drawer and pulled out a photo, faded. He held it out. It showed a younger version of him holding a baby girl with curly hair and laughing eyes. "That's you," he said hoarsely. "And me." Amira stared at the photo in disbelief. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." David looked at her with tears brimming. "I didn't know. They told me you were dead. I've searched for years." Just then, his phone buzzed. He answered, barely breathing. The lab, the results. His hand trembled as he opened the message. "DNA match, 99.97%. He looked up at her, eyes wide. "It's you, Amira. You're my daughter." Amira's chest caved in as the world around her cracked open. Her voice shook. "You're saying you're my father?" David nodded slowly. "Yes, you left," she said, stepping back. "You never came back for me." "I didn't know," he said, voice breaking. "I thought you were dead. I was lied to." But Amira couldn't breathe. The pain of a lifetime of abandonment, of scraping through every day without answers, flooded her all at once. She left his office without another word, eyes burning with betrayal and disbelief. At home, she confronted Carla. The door slammed behind her. "You knew," she said, chest heaving. "You knew who I was." Carla looked up from her seat, unfazed. "So what if I did?" "Why?" Amira demanded. "Why would you lie to me? Let me suffer when my father was alive." Carla stood, sneering. "Because your father's mother paid me. After your mother died, she didn't want you near him. She said he'd ruin you, or fight her for custody. I needed money. Papers were forged. I kept you hidden. End of story. You sold me." Amira gasped. "I kept you alive," Carla snapped. "And this is the thanks I get." Amira shook her head, rage and sorrow clashing in her throat. "You didn't keep me alive. You kept me quiet. You kept me lost." That night, Amira packed what little she had and left. The apartment, once her prison, was no longer home. Her steps were shaky, her heart shattered, but she walked away from the only family she'd ever known, not toward comfort, but toward truth. The world had changed, and so had she. The girl who had once walked barefoot to save her only good shoes was now walking into a life she never imagined, and a storm of healing, trust, and identity she wasn't yet sure she could survive. The room was cold and sterile, the kind used for high-stakes negotiations and private confrontations. David sat across from Carla, his eyes dark with restrained fury. Behind a one-way glass wall, Amira stood hidden, heart pounding, hands clenched tightly by her sides. She had agreed to watch, unsure if she wanted closure or vindication or both. David opened a manila folder and laid it on the table between them. "Your game is over," he said quietly. Carla scoffed, crossing her arms. "I don't know what you think you have, but I have proof of the money transfers from my mother." He cut in, voice sharper now. "I have documents showing you forged guardianship papers. I have witness statements that place you in the home where Amira's mother died. Don't waste our time." Carla's face twitched. You rich people think you can just twist things to suit your story. David leaned forward. I trusted my mother when she said my daughter was dead. I mourned her, and you knew where she was the whole time. For a long moment, Carla said nothing. Then her mouth curled bitterly. Your mother hated her. Your little idioma thought she was trash, too poor, too loud, too black for your precious legacy. After the funeral, she came to me, offered money, said you'd never raise a child like that properly, said she'd rather the girl disappear than grow up carrying your name. Her voice cracked under the weight of her own words, but she didn't stop. I took the deal. I had nothing. No husband, no money, and suddenly this little girl with wide eyes and no place to go. She laughed bitterly. I gave her a roof, fed her when I could. What more did you want? Behind the glass, Amira's eyes welled up, her breath shaky. All her suspicions were true. The lies Carla spun, the silence, the cold glances, all rooted in one unforgivable betrayal. David sat back, stunned. The truth struck deeper than he expected. His own mother, the one he defended, the one who had cried beside him at his daughter's memorial, had stolen Amira from him, manipulated him, left him grieving a lie. You didn't just steal my child, David whispered. You stole 20 years of her life. You let her suffer, thinking no one wanted her. Carla looked away. I did what I had to do. When the confrontation ended, David stepped into the hallway, his hands trembling. Amira stood there, eyes brimming but unreadable. He looked at her, then dropped his gaze. I'm sorry, he said, voice cracking. I failed you, not just once, but again and again. I believed lies because they were easier than facing the pain. I let myself be blind, and you paid the price. He stepped closer, his eyes pleading. If I could go back and burn the whole world down to change it, I would. But I can't. All I can do is tell you the truth, no, and ask for a chance to make things right. His tears fell freely now, shame painting his face raw. I missed everything. Your first steps, your first day of school, your voice. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Amira, but I'll never stop trying to earn it. Amira's lip quivered, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The part of her that had longed for this moment, the missing father, the broken apart, her felt relief, but all she felt was grief, a cavern of lost time, of pain that no truth could erase. Without a word, she turned and walked away, her heart shattering all over again. Outside, Lana waited on a bench, watching as Amira emerged, shoulders hunched and eyes glassy. She stood and wrapped her arms around her friend without a word. Amira collapsed into her, the dam finally breaking. He was right there, she sobbed. All these years, he didn't even know I was alive. Lana stroked her hair, grounding her. And now he does, she said softly. Now you know. That's something that's yours. Amira shook her head. It hurts. It hurts so much, I know, Lana whispered. But sometimes, finding the truth isn't about healing right away. It's about finally being free to begin. And in that moment, as Amira wept into her friend's arms, she realized she was no longer lost, not yet whole but finally seen. The weeks that followed were quiet but transformative. Amira, still reeling from the emotional storm that had torn through her life, agreed reluctantly at first to attend therapy, the sessions paid for by David. It was there, in a softly lit office with a gentle therapist who didn't ask to much too fast, that she began to untangle years of buried grief, abandonment, and confusion. For the first time, she spoke about her mother without fear of being dismissed, about Carla's constant cruelty, and about the ache of growing up feeling invisible. Therapy didn't fix everything overnight, but it gave her language for her pain, and slowly, a fragile sense of power returned. When David offered her a room in his home, she shook her head. I don't want to be rescued, she told him. I just want a place of my own. Respecting her boundaries. He helped her secure a modest apartment not far from her school, tiny space with peeling paint, a wobbly ceiling fan, and a window that let in golden morning light. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She hung up pictures of her mother, stacked her school books neatly by the bed, and lit a candle every night to remind herself this was a beginning. She enrolled full-time in her social work program, her once scattered studies now focused and determined. David visited often, not as a hovering parent, but as a man trying to rebuild a broken bridge. He never brought extravagant gifts, just himself, his time, his stories about her mother, and eventually, laughter. Sometimes they would sit on the small balcony sipping tea in silence, and sometimes they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. Amira learned to watch not just what he said, but what he did, and slowly, piece by piece, trust returned not as a flood, but as a steady drip filling the cracks. Meanwhile, Carla's time of reckoning arrived. Armed with years of evidence and testimony, David pressed charges for fraud, child endangerment, and obstruction. Carla was arrested without drama, her usual bitterness replaced with bitter resignation. For Amira, it wasn't revenge, it was release. The legal actions severed the last tie that bound her to that painful past, granting her both justice and distance. She didn't attend the trial. She didn't need to. The court's verdict was not her closer, her freedom was. One sunny afternoon, Amira took a quiet trip to the cemetery where her mother had been buried years ago. The headstone was simple, weather-worn, tucked between crooked wild flowers. She knelt before it, eyes damp but calm, and placed a folded note beneath the stone. It read only 4 words. I found him, Mama. She stayed there for a long time, letting the wind run its fingers through her curls, imagining her mother's voice again soft, proud, full of love. For the first time in her life, Amira felt the weight begin to lift, not because everything was healed, or because she had found a perfect ending, but because she had survived the truth and claimed her future with both hands. She stood, stronger than ever, and walked her way toward something she was finally building for herself. The sun was warm and golden over the courtyard of the community college as rows of graduates sat in neat caps and gowns, their faces beaming with pride and nerves. Amira stood at the podium, her voice steady, her presence calm but radiant. I used to think identity was something you were born with, she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd. But I've learned that it's something you choose who you want to be, even when the world tries to decide for you, even when lies try to bury your truth, even when shortcuts seem easier than standing tall. Her gaze flickered toward the front row, where David sat quietly, dabbing his eyes with a tissue, his pride barely contained. I didn't get here alone, she continued, but I did get here by never giving up on who I believed I could be. Integrity isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. The crowd erupted in applause as she stepped down, her diploma in hand and her heart lighter than it had ever been. David rose slowly, unsure at first, until Amira walked straight into his arms. He held her carefully, reverently, like something he never thought he'd be allowed to hold again. She didn't seek his approval. She didn't need his name. She had found her voice, her truth, her worth, and now she chose to share it, not as the lost girl she once was, but as the woman she had become. And in that moment, with the noise of celebration swelling round them, father and daughter stood together, not perfect, not whole, but healing. Fade out.